Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we're about all things cinema. So you're into physical media collecting, and you're starting to, or you're thinking about starting a Criterion collection. You've heard about an upcoming Criterion flash sale or an upcoming Barnes & Noble or Amazon July or November 50% off sale, and you're wondering what to get. What titles do I pick up to build out my collection? How do I start with the Criterion collection? So for those of you who have been following my channel, you might have seen my first video in this series, The Beginner's Guide to the Criterion Collection, that I put out a couple of months ago, where I laid out 6 recommendations if you're starting your Criterion collection. I highly recommend that you check out that video. This is part 2 of that series, where I've got 5 more recommendations that I'm going to share with you of additional titles you might want to look at as you're looking to build out your Criterion collection. So let's get started. Okay, so to start us off, I'm going to recommend that you pick up a title from director Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is prolific in the Criterion collection. Pretty much every movie that he makes and directs eventually makes their way into the Criterion collection. So I highly recommend that you consider picking up a Wes Anderson title to build out your collection. Now, a couple of recommendations in that space might be considering picking up Rushmore. Rushmore is a great title. I highly recommend this title. It is spine number 65 in the Criterion collection, so this would be a good one to take a look at. Or a more recent title, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which was recently released by the Criterion collection. This is a title that had been rumored for the longest time to be a Criterion collection release, and people have been waiting for this to come out for actually a number of years before it finally came out, I believe last year. So Grand Budapest Hotel or Rushmore are 2 great titles to consider from director Wes Anderson in building out your collection. Okay, my second recommendation is going to take us into the French New Wave. So as you know, the Criterion collection covers cinema from directors from all over the world. As you build out your collection, you're going to find that your collection is going to become more and more international, as is represented from titles from not only the United States, but titles from France, from Italy, from Germany, from Africa, from Japan, from all over the world. And that's part of the beauty of the Criterion collection, is that they focus on classic and contemporary cinema from all over the world. So I've got a few French New Wave titles that you might want to consider from 2 of my favorite directors from the collection, François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard. So the first 2 titles are from François Truffaut, and the first recommendation would be The 400 Blows. This is a fantastic film. This is a great entry into the French New Wave. If you are just getting into that genre of film, this is a fantastic film from Truffaut that I highly recommend, along with Jules and Jim. This is another great film from François Truffaut. The 400 Blows is from 1959. It's in black and white. Jules and Jim is also in black and white. It's from 1962. These are 2 great films and great entries in the Criterion collection that I highly recommend from French director François Truffaut. And from Jean-Luc Godard, the 2 titles I would recommend to get started in for French New Wave would be either Breathless or Band of Outsiders. So these are 2 excellent additions from Criterion. Breathless is from 1960. This is a absolutely seminal film in the French New Wave. It is, I believe, Jean-Luc Godard's first feature film or his second feature film. I need to check on that, but this is a fantastic film and a fantastic addition from Criterion, and it's inspired so much of cinema ever since. Band of Outsiders is from 1964. This is another great film from Jean-Luc Godard. And so these 2 films here, along with these 2 films from François Truffaut, take your pick. Dive into the French New Wave, and these are 4 titles that I highly, highly recommend that you consider in building out your Criterion collection. Check out a French New Wave film from Truffaut or Godard. Okay, my number 3 recommendation in continuing to build out your Criterion collection is go for a Federico Fellini film, okay? As you may know, the Criterion collection recently released the Essential Fellini box set, which is an absolutely fantastic box set that I had a chance to pick up as part of the November Criterion collection sale. I'm not sure I would recommend it to someone who's new to the collection. So with Fellini, I would recommend checking out single edition titles 8½, or La Dolce Vita, or Amarcord, which are still sold as separate editions, or maybe checking out Nyssa Cabiria or La Strada if it's available on the Criterion channel, or if you happen to find it on Criterion DVD or some other medium that you can see those films. Those are all great recommended titles for Federico Fellini's filmography, and they're just great films. I mean, I absolutely love Nyssa Cabiria, I love La Strada, I love Giulietta Massini's performance in those films. They're absolutely fantastic films and great representations of Fellini's work. But 8½, is a fantastic film starring Marcello Mastroianni in a tremendous role. That's sort of a self-biographical story of Fellini, as well as La Dolce Vita is another fantastic film, and Amarcord as well. So my number 3 recommendation is sort of dip the toe into the pond and select a Federico Fellini title. All right, so number 4 on my list of recommended titles to pick up as you're building out your Criterion collection is to select a film from a Black filmmaker. So as some of you may know, in recent years, the Criterion collection has made a concerted effort to drive greater diversity and inclusion in their lineup of films that they release as part of their collection. So you're going to see more and more films from female directors, more and more films from directors and filmmakers of color. And so that's definitely a welcome thing to see. So I highly recommend that you pick out a film from a Black filmmaker. So Spike Lee is featured in the Criterion collection, and a couple of notable titles from Mr. Lee include, of course, probably his most famous work, Do the Right Thing, from 1989. This is an absolutely amazing film that is a landmark of cinema that has issues that were relevant back in the 1980s and are still relevant in today's world. So this is a fantastic film. I highly recommend it, from Spike Lee. This is a Spike Lee joint, and it's Do the Right Thing. Fantastic film. And then another film from Mr. Lee is also a film that is very enlightening and eye-opening, is a film from 2000 called Bamboozled. This is another great film from Mr. Spike Lee that deals with some pretty heavy issues when it comes to race that I highly recommend that you check out. It really hits you right between the eyes. It doesn't play around with these issues, and I think that's a great thing. You know, I think that's important. And this film deals with those issues really, really well. So highly recommend Bamboozled from Spike Lee. Great film. And then there's another film that I recently saw a few years ago from African director Ousmane Sembène, and it's called Black Girl. So this is a film from 1966, and it's in French. And this is a really nice film from African director Ousmane Sembène. Now, later on in February, another of Sembène's works is coming out called Mondavi. So I'm really looking forward to that release from Criterion. But this is an excellent release, Black Girl, that I highly recommend. It's spine number 852 in the Criterion collection. So check this one out. And then another film from a Black director that I would recommend is a film from director William Greaves called Symbiocytotoxoplasm, which is a mouthful, but that's another one that you might want to take a look at. So that's my number 4 recommendation. Select a film from a Black filmmaker. Okay, for my number 5 recommendation, I've got a few contemporary films that you might want to consider as part of your collection. Of course, the Criterion collection has editions all the way back to the 1920s and the 30s and the 40s, all the way up to current day. And for those of us who are into classic and those old films, that's great. But some people are just more into the contemporary films. They don't like older films necessarily. And the good thing is, for those film fans, there are a number of editions from Criterion that are more contemporary in nature. So I'm going to talk about a few contemporary films that you might want to consider in building out your collection. So for purposes of this video, when I talk about contemporary films, I'm talking about films from the last, say, 10 or 15 years. So I've got 5 contemporary titles here to talk about. The first is from Abbas Kiarostami, and it's called Like Someone in Love. This is a 2012 film from Kiarostami. This is a really nice film from Abbas Kiarostami, who was an Iranian director, but this film takes place in Tokyo. So this is a really nice film I highly recommend, Like Someone in Love. Another film that I would recommend is from director Richard Linklater, And this is a great film from 2014. It's called Boyhood. So I highly recommend this title. This film was shot, as you may know, over about a dozen years. And so bringing all these actors together to shoot different aspects of this film through the years was an amazing feat in and of itself. And I highly recommend checking out this title, Boyhood. Another recent film is a film starring French actress Marion Cotillard, and it's called 2 Days and 1 Night. This is from 2014. It is spine number 771 in the Criterion collection. This is a really, really nice film. This stars Marion Cotillard as a factory worker, and it's just really interesting seeing her in a role like this. She does a phenomenal job in this film. This is just a great film directed by Jean-Pierre and Luc Dardenne that I highly recommend from 2014, 2 Days and 1 Night. Got two more for you here, both from Netflix. The first is Roma from 2018. This is a fantastic film that is just so beautifully shot in black and white that I think is just a wonderful film from Netflix that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I highly recommend it. This is from Alfonso Cuarón. So this is a great film from Netflix that I highly recommend. It clocks in at 135 minutes. Again, it's shot in beautiful black and white. This is a great title from the Criterion collection. And then last but not least is a title that I've done a review for on this channel, and that's 2019's The Irishman, directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci. This is a fantastic film. Check out my review on this channel for this title. I love this film. It covers like 40 years of time in the lives of these characters, and it's just so well done. There are people who will debate about the quality of the de-aging effects. I thought it was fine, quite frankly. And I just think the work that went into putting this together and really bringing these actors together for probably the last time was just a great piece of work. So I highly recommend The Irishman if you have not picked this one up. So those are my recommendations for contemporary films. Again, there's a lot of other contemporary films that you can choose from in the collection, but those are the ones that I came up with for this video. Okay, so there you have it. That's my beginner's guide to the Criterion Collection Part 2. Those are my 5 recommendations of titles that you should pick up as you continue to build out your Criterion collection. Again, I highly recommend giving a Wes Anderson film, either Rushmore or Grand Budapest Hotel. I recommend diving into the French wave with those 4 titles from either Francois Truffaut or Jean-Luc Godard. I highly recommend a Fellini film, such as 8½, Amarcord, La Dolce Vita, which have single edition releases from Criterion, or if you happen to find Nights of Cabiria or La Strada somewhere on the Criterion channel or some other source, maybe even on Criterion DVD, check those out. And as you get to know Fellini a little bit better, you might want to dive in and take the plunge and get that Essential Fellini set, which is incredible. Highly recommend that. The 4th recommendation is choose a film from a Black filmmaker. Spike Lee has a couple of great titles in the collection with Do the Right Thing and Bamboozled. You also might want to check out a couple of Ousmane Sembène's titles, such as Black Girl and upcoming Mandabi. So definitely check out one of those. And then last but not least, we have a number of contemporary films in the collection that you might want to take a look at. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these recommendations? How are you doing in your Criterion collecting? Has this video been helpful to you? If so, let me know in the comments below what you think about these recommendations and what you think about any of these movies if you've had a chance to see them. Also, let me know what are some of the recent Criterion Collection editions that you have been watching. And let me know in the comments below what Criterion Collection editions you're looking forward to Criterion releasing later this year. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.